Charleston County Historic Preservation Commission meeting. This meeting has been noticed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. This commission acts in review and recommending capacity for designations and removal of historic properties and districts. And the commission also reviews proposed National Register of Historic Places nomination. The commission has final decision-making authority on certificates of historic appropriateness. My name is Jason Crowley, chair of this commission, and to my left is Vice Chair Pat Sullivan, John Wright, Margie Longshore, and Donna Gardner. And to my right is Pat Jones, Tisha Smalls-Brown, and Melanie Millar. And if Lori Lechner will attends, I'll also introduce her when she arrives.
She is here. She's in the restroom.
Oh, perfect. Well, we will welcome her when she gets in, and we'll delay until she's able to get in and sit down. At the dais, we have Commission Attorney Mark Bell and Joel Evans, Director of Planning and Zoning. And Joel, would you like to introduce your staff?
Sure. Over to my right, the Deputy Director, Andrew Melisick, and Adam Sine. And at the podium will be Nikki Grumble introducing the case.
Great, thank you. And I will give Lori a moment to sit down. Welcome. I'd like to remind you all that in order to get a good recording of the meeting minutes, please speak loudly and clearly into your microphones. And also, Charleston County continues to strongly suggest mask use when inside county buildings until further notice, and we appreciate you all following that rule. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the December 14th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion and a second to approve?
I move to approve.
Gardner makes a motion.
Second.
Ms. Millar makes the second. Is there any discussion of the minutes? All right. All those in favor to approve the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those disapprove, nay. The ayes have it. The next agenda item is HIST 1221000045, a request for a certificate of historic appropriateness. And Nikki, when you're ready, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. Like Jason said, this is a request for a certificate of historic appropriateness to subdivide a 6.02 acre portion of TMS 301000034 located at 1198 Beast Ferry Road. And this is a parcel that is partially within the Ashrae River Historic District. This CHA corresponds to a subdivision plat application that we have under review in our department for the larger tract of 340.354 acres. And like I said a moment ago, this is to subdivide a 6.02 acre portion of that large tract. This is the location of the site when looking at the county as a whole. This is the zoning and future land use map for the area. It's currently zoned PD 73E, and that is the Hunt Club Plan Development, and this portion is currently undeveloped. The Hunt Club PD is approved for a 505 single-family detached development and attached residential units, many of which have already been constructed. It's also approved for some residential recreational facilities, 15 acres of light commercial uses along Beast Ferry Road, 34 acres adjoining the Beast Ferry landfill for self-storage facility uses, and an assisted living facility along Bear Swamp Road. One self-storage facility has already been constructed, and there are no other non-residential uses under review by our office at this time. Neighboring properties to the west are zoned single-family residential 4 and contain single-family dwelling units, a storage business, a church, and a horse farm. Properties to the south are across Beast Ferry Road, and those are zoned community, commercial, and industrial. And they contain a gas station, campground, or are undeveloped. To the east, the property is zoned industrial and houses the county landfill. And properties to the north are within the city of Charleston and are zone plan unit development, and that large tract of land is a part of the Long Savannah development. So this is the Ashrae River Historic District map, and it also shows the boundary increase that was done in 2010 in the pinker version. So this property is located at the southern end of the district boundary increase. Here's another map showing the property in reference to the sites and structures that contribute to the district. This is the proposed plat, so I have several things pointed out here. So at the top where you see the yellow hatching, that is the Ashrae River Historic District, and then beyond that is the 300-foot buffer area, which would trigger a review by this commission. The area outlined in red is all of the overall parcel that we're looking at today. That is 340 acres. And then at the bottom of the screen is the 6-acre portion that they are requesting CHA approval for the subdivision application. And these are just some other aerial views showing the land of the large tract, and then on the bottom photo is showing that front portion that they'd like to subdivide. Let's see. The National Register listing describes the Ashrae River Historic District as a 24,828 acre tract of land, which has 136 contributing sites, structures, and objects. The district is split between Charleston and Dorchester counties, and it is also under 5 different municipalities. The boundary was increased in 2010 with an expansion of the National Register district. The district includes plantations, gardens, vernacular buildings, slave settlement communities, agricultural fields, phosphate mining, among many other things. And the historic functions included in the National Register listing include agriculture, domestic industry, defense, landscape, and transportation. For the approval criteria, for criteria A, the applicant described the significance of the district, and that criteria B and C were not applicable. For criteria D, it required the applicant to demonstrate consistency with prevailing patterns of the area, to which the applicant provided the following response. The commercial portion of the 340-acre parcel is located on Bees Ferry Road and Hunt Club Run. It is in a planned development district, which allows for a multitude of commercial uses and is surrounded by commercial properties of various uses, including gas stations, self-storage, and retail. We are looking to subdivide the commercial property and keep it consistent with its surrounding uses. Criteria E requires the applicant to minimize potential negative impacts to the district and the site, to which the applicant responded that the Ashrae River Historic District abuts this parcel approximately 5,000 feet from our proposed subdivision and is separated by the Hunt Club residential neighborhood. This subdivision will not adversely impact the Ashrae River Historic District. Staff believes that all applicable approval criteria have been met, so we recommend approval. And this is the notification information for this case. And that's all I have for this one.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff from commissioner members before we open up the floor to public comment? Yes, Ms. Sullivan?
Yeah, you mentioned that there were you sent out 691 letters. Could you tell us if you received any responses? And if
We received one question just for clarification purposes of why this was going to be reviewed by the HPC from a resident in the Hunt Club neighborhood, but otherwise we have not heard from anybody else.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I think you might have asked my question. I just wanted to make sure it was.
Just for some clarification from my part. So the yellow here is the buffer, which would trigger the review, correct?
Correct. So because this parcel is partially actually within, it does overlap somewhat at the top portion. It's showing as blue on the screen. That is all a part of that large tract. So, but any subdivision application or site plan review request within that buffer area would have to be reviewed by the HPC.
And was the PUD approved before or after the expansion of the district?
I believe it was before.
Was before? Oh, but that was before the district was expanded in 2010.
The subdivision was in about 2000.
Okay, so when this district came in and a portion of it was there, this was already platted out and approved. And all of that residential area, is that all built out or generally built out?
I think it's about 95% built out.
And then the property itself is down, and that's right on Bees Ferry Road, correct?
It's at the corner of Bees Ferry and the entrance into Huntford.
This aerial, the one at the lower portion, that, to me, it demonstrates kind of a better visual of that front portion.
Mr.
Which in the PD, it allows non-residential uses.
Great, thank you. Mr. Wright?
Is there any future development that could potentially come to this property? And if it does, will that come before us as well?
So future development would have to comply with the plan development regulations. So it would have to be a use that's allowed in that document. It would not come before the commission because it would be subdivided off from that large tract. So it would be out of the buffer area that would require review by the HPC.
Any other questions before we open up the floor to public comment? Thank you, Nikki. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in support of this application? Yes, sir. Please give your name and address.
Rob Wilson, 722 Riley Road. I'm the applicant. And Nikki pretty well covered it, but I just wanted to be up here if you guys had any questions for me.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against this application? All right, if there is no other further public comments, I'll close out the public comment portion. Can I get a motion and a second to open up discussion?
I would move for approval.
Move for approval from Ms. Longshore. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion to approve and a second from Ms. Sullivan. Is there any discussion? And I'll just say this seems pretty straightforward. It's pretty far from the district. I recognize the trigger mechanism for this, but from my perspective, it seems reasonable. Any other discussion coming in? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. This is the final decision of the Historic Preservation Commission. If any person with a substantial interest in a decision of the Historic Preservation Commission chooses to appeal this decision, they may do so to the Circuit Court of Charleston County. Such appeal shall be filed within 30 calendar days after today's date. Thank you very much. The next agenda item is HIST 0122000046, a request for a certificate of historic appropriateness. Nikki, whenever you're ready, please proceed.
Thank you. This request is to construct a single-family detached dwelling unit and an accessory dwelling unit to create a dwelling group and to retroactively permit an existing shed at Brooklyn Plantation. And this is a property that is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This site is located at 2328 Laurel Hill Road on Edisto Island and contains 59.62 acres. Dwelling groups are required to obtain site plan review approval, for which an application is currently under review in our office. In the zoning and land development ordinance, a dwelling group is defined as two or more principal structures, each a single-family detached dwelling unit that are located on the same zoning lot not including accessory dwelling units. So I thought that'd be good to put out there from the beginning of what exactly a dwelling group is. And HPC has also already approved 2 previous applications on this property. An application to paint the exterior of the Plantation house was approved in July of 2021, and a CHA to demolish a non-historic barn structure was also approved in November of 2021. This is the location of the site when looking at the county as a whole. The current zoning on this property is agricultural preservation 10, and the future land use designation is parks, recreation, and open space. Surrounding properties are either AG 10, agricultural preservation 10, or agricultural residential, and contain single-family residences, mobile homes, or vacant land. This is the proposed site plan for the dwelling group. So you'll see over on the right-hand upper portion is the Brooklyn Plantation house. In the middle is where they propose to put the new accessory dwelling unit. There's also a small circle in the middle that shows where the current shed is to be retroactively permitted. So that was something that was constructed by a previous owner but was never permitted. And then the furthest on the left is the new single-family dwelling. And this is just an aerial view showing the location of all of those buildings. Brooklyn Plantation was listed on the National Register in 1987 for its architectural significance, being constructed between 1800 and 1807. Prior to the Revolutionary War, Brooklands was originally the site of an indigo plantation, having the original house located near the site of the current home. The present-day building was most likely associated with the production of Sea Island cotton and the antebellum and post-Civil War days. The property is also the site of a small family graveyard for the Jenkins family, who were the original owners of the property, and it was later used as a site for a boys' school before returning to private ownership. 16.7 acres of the subject property and a small portion of an adjoining property are included on the National Register listing, which contains the historic house, the remnants of a landscape yard, a pond, and a small family cemetery. So this shows where that National Register boundary is in the yellow area. So that is the portion of the larger tract of land that is included on the listing. So that is the 16.7 acre portion, but the entire parcel is outlined in red, and that is roughly 59 acres. And this also shows the location of the existing structures and the proposed new structures. These are some photos of the existing historic home. On the left is a view of the historic porch and its location to the new single-family residence and accessory dwelling unit. So that would be if you were on the historic porch looking out towards those new structures, this is what you would see. And then on the right is a view from the ground in front of the historic house towards where the new accessory would be. This is a view from where the new single-family residence would be located, looking towards the historic house. And this is a photo of the existing shed that the applicant is requesting to be retroactively permitted, so it would remain in place. These are some sketch plans that the applicant provided. They had not gotten to the full architecture of doing this development, but they did provide some sketch plans of what they proposed the main house and the accessory to look like, and included some materials and other photos just to give you an idea of a visual of what those would be. Okay, so for the approval criteria, in criteria A, the applicant described the significance of the plantation. For criteria B, the applicant references the exterior form and appearance and the effect of such on other structures on the historic property, to which the applicant responded that there will not be any modifications or additions proposed to the historic house. The secondary house will be over 700 feet away from the historic house, and the pool house, which I'm calling the accessory dwelling unit, will be approximately 600 feet away from the historic house. The views of the historic house will be preserved, and the new structures are largely shielded from visibility by existing oak trees and plantings. All proposed structures will be smaller in scale and less visible than the historic house. The pool house is the closer of the two, and it is only 1,200 square feet, single-story, and low to the ground. For criteria C, it requires the application of the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, to which the applicant responded that the new construction is appropriately scaled, a two-story building raised less than 4 feet off the ground, while the existing is a two-story building raised 7 feet off the ground and inhabited ground floor. The pool house emulates the massing of the building, but with more contemporary treatment at the screen porch, and is only 2 feet off the ground. The pool house is 600 feet away from the main building. The second house is 1,000 feet away from the main building, and they are cited specifically to not intrude on the view of the house itself or the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, their site boundaries. For criteria D, requires demonstration of consistency with the prevailing patterns of existing lots, densities, spacing of homes, lot sizes, and shapes. And for this, staff responded that the site plan review requires that dwelling groups demonstrate their ability to meet the density, intensity, and dimensional standards of the zoning district in which they are located. While this proposal does not subdivide the property, the ability to be able to subdivide the property pursuant to the AG 10 zoning district requirements has been demonstrated by the applicant in compliance with the requirements for dwelling groups in our zoning ordinance. And for criteria E, the applicant responded, noting that the existing landscape will remain intact and planned plantings to enhance the buffering treatments of the historic area are planned. Staff recommends approval, and these are the notifications. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff before we open the floor to public comment? Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, again, did you get any responses to your letters?
No, we did not get any.
That's amazing. Okay, and then a comment. I was looking, you gave us the square footage of the pool house of 1,200 square feet, but I didn't see the square footage of the new house or the historic house. I was trying to compare the sizes of the two. I got that one is 4 foot off the ground and one is 7 feet off the ground, but square footage was another thing I wanted to compare.
So I'm not sure that they know exactly the square footage because we wouldn't be looking at the actual context of the actual building at this point. It was only for the establishment of a dwelling group and if that was going to be allowed on this site. They mentioned the 1,200 square feet because that is the maximum allowed size that you can have an accessory dwelling unit in this district. So I think that's why that was specifically stated, but we do have the applicant here, so they may be able to answer those questions.
Just before that, so I'd be interested to hear that, but just another clarification point. So we're looking at the dwelling group approval today. Would the applicant have to come back for us to approve the actual design of the buildings as well?
So because it is on a National Register listed site, they would have to come back in order to get the specific zoning permits to construct each of those buildings. This is an unusual situation because the dwelling group approval would be required to have these additional structures on one lot. And that is a site plan review process, which triggers the HPC review. So this one's kind of twofold.
I'm not sure I understood your answer.
So A dwelling group option is an option in our zoning ordinance in lieu of actually subdividing. So it's as if it's being subdivided, the property. So they're asking for the, if you kind of look at it that way, it might make sense. They're just asking for the approval of the subdivision that's not a subdivision, it's a dwelling group.
Yeah.
Then when they'll come back subsequently with the, for the approval of the HPC for the actual structures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So a dwelling group is seen as like one thing in
Right.
itself?
Yeah, so a dwelling group is an option in our ordinance that allows you to put as many dwelling units on a piece of property that's allowed by zoning and density as if it was to be subdivided. They just, the plat is not recorded. So during the site plan review process, they show where the lines would be as if it was to be subdivided. It meets all the zoning ordinances, just that they're choosing not to subdivide.
So
They're choosing not to record the plat.
this is the equivalent of like a family compound.
Correct. That's
You
right.
can't necessarily sell one house without subdividing at a different time.
Yes, that's correct.
And just for clarification, as it is now, if the applicant were not to do a dwelling group, they would only be allowed to have one principal dwelling and one accessory unit. So that would be maxed out on this one lot without subdividing.
Are there any easement restrictions that are separate from the county?
I believe that they do have an easement on this property, and we've been in contact with them for all of these different applications to make sure that they're in compliance. I know they did approve the pool house to be considered an accessory structure, so we have had ongoing contact with the easement holder to make sure that what we classify something in our zoning terms is established and it can meet the same criteria that the easement holder has. Because we use a little bit different language, but we've been in contact consistently.
Thank you. Ms. Wright?
Based on the size of the property, how many groups can you put on this property according to the ordinance?
How many acres is the,
59.
59, and it's 80, 10? So
Five dwelling groups?
5 units, 5 dwelling.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. And each dwelling unit can have an accessory structure.
So
So,
10.
yeah, yes. So you could get 10, technically 10 dwelling units out of it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Is the applicant here? Give your name and address as well.
Simmons Young, 133 Bufane Street, Charleston, South Carolina. Thank you all for hearing us today. I wanted to point out 2 things about the property. One is that it is under easement with the Low Country Open Land Trust. This puts a 100-foot buffer rather than the required 35-foot OCRM buffer, not necessarily all's purview, but it also restricts to 3 houses rather than what would we just heard would be allowed as 5 plus 5. This will max out the property under that easement.
Does that pool house count as one of those 3?
It does, and they have a letter that we submitted with the application.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Yes.
I
Ms.
do have a
Longshore.
question. With regard to access into the property, can you confirm that the current access into the historic house is maintained, and then we would have separate access to the new units?
That's a good question, and that is correct. We will maintain the access it's on the right at the slide that's on there, and there's actually a reflecting pond, so as you drive up, you see the house reflected. And all of our activity takes a turn to the left before you even round that corner, which is sort of the central part of the slide there.
And with regard to this site plan that we're looking at, is there any new landscaping that would be added to it, or would this be maintaining the existing landscaping for the view shed buffering between the historic and the new?
Mostly maintaining the existing is the important part. We've got a couple grand oaks, and then we have some just regular water oaks that are along that north-south road there that are helping to screen. And we will add some smaller plantings, but nothing as big as what's out there now.
If you don't mind me continuing to ask some questions, where was the barn that we approved demolition on this site plan in relationship to where the new buildings are being constructed?
It is up and to the right where it says shed to be retroactively permitted. It's right in that general area. That shed is probably 50 feet southwest of the barn.
Okay. So the pool house is essentially where the polo fields were?
That's correct, yeah. The pool house is probably 80 feet northeast of the existing, or the demoed barn.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak in support of this application? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against this application? All right, I will close out the public comment portion of this application. Can I get a motion and a second, and then we can go into discussion?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Ms. Sullivan. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll give that to Mr. Wright. So we have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion from commissioners before we go to a vote? All right. So we have a motion and a second to approve the dwelling group and retroactively approve the shed that was built. So permit the shed and permit the dwelling group. And then just for final clarification, they will have to come back once the buildings are further designed out for approval. That's correct? All right. Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Okay. So this is the final decision of the Historic Preservation Commission. If any person with a substantial interest in the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission chooses to appeal this decision, they may do so to the Circuit Court of Charleston County. Such appeal shall be filled within 30 calendar days after today's date. Thank you very much, sir. The next agenda item is HIST 0122-00047, a request for a historic appropriateness. And Nikki, when you're ready, please
Sure.
proceed.
So this CHA request is to construct a market and restroom facilities at Boone Hall Plantation, a National Register listed property located at 1235 Long Point Road on 619 acres. So prior to this request, 2 certificate of historic appropriateness requests for this parcel have been approved. The first was for an open-air market structure for farm sales, which was approved in 2020. And the second was for the rehabilitation of an addition to the gin house in 2021. The open-air market structure previously approved in 2020 was never completed in the site plan review process, so it was never constructed. The applicant has submitted plans for this new version of the market, which is an enclosed structure, and restroom buildings in place of those previously approved open-air structures. Because the proposed market and restroom structures are significantly different than what was previously approved, the request requires review and approval from the HPC prior to site plan review approval. Here is the location of the site. The zoning on this property is resource management, and it contains a working farm. Adjacent properties in the county to the west are zoned R4, which is single-family residential 4. Properties to the east are within the Sweetgrass Basket Stand Special Consideration Area and the Old Georgetown Loop Office Area of the Mount Pleasant Overlay Zoning District. Properties to the north and south are within the jurisdiction of the town of Mount Pleasant and are zoned residential. And this is an aerial view of the site, and you'll see at the lower portion along Highway 17 is the approximate location of the market and restroom facilities. This is the map showing the National Register listing boundary. So this site only contains 110 acres of the 619 acre parcel that is listed on the National Register. And again, the approximate location of the market and restroom facility is shown outside of this boundary. Boone Hall Plantation was listed on the National Register in 1983 with a boundary increase in 1994. The plantation developed over the course of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries and contains 9 surviving slave houses dating from 1790 to 1810. The oldest surviving structure on the site is the smokehouse constructed in 1750. And also noted as significant on the listing is the alley of live oak trees that were planted in 1843 and spanned from the plantation's southwestern entrance to the original house site. These are photos of the proposed location of the structures. So this is a comparison of the previously approved site plan and the new revised site plan. So on the left is the previous approval, and it is a single structure that is situated northwest and southeast with parking towards the road. So the lower portion is where Highway 17 lies. And the new site plan on the right is has the structure situated going from northeast to southwest with a separate restroom structure to the rear and parking in between the buildings. Here's some additional comparisons. In the left-hand column were the previously approved version, and on the right-hand side are the elevations of the new proposed market. And these are elevations of the separate structure for the restroom facility. Okay, so for the approval criteria, the applicant provided a response to criteria A describing the significance of the plantation. And for criteria B, that requires the applicant to describe the exterior form and appearance of the new structures, to which the applicant described as a timber-framed barn and ancillary bathroom building. The market barn is a single gable roof structure with covered side porches running the length of the main enclosed area of the building. The timber structure, crafted by a local timber artisan, consists of rough-sawn cypress timbers with mortise and tenon joinery. The core of the building will be clad in rough-sawn cypress siding, while the interior of the building will remain open to display the beautiful construction details. The side porches of the barn will remain open and display traditional knee bracing, which is inherent in all historic timber frame structures. The bathroom structure is also a single gable roof with the same slope as the main gable of the barn. Both of the roof finish materials will be traditional standing seam or 5V metal roof and a galvanized finish. The bathroom building will be clad in rough-sawn cypress to match the barn structure, and the massing of the bathroom structure is simple, with 2 enclosed bathrooms linked by an open porch or dog trot. This is a traditional Southern vernacular building form. Criteria C requires application of the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, to which the applicant responded noting an existing conservation easement that provides additional layer of protection to the development of the plantation, and also notes that the purpose of the market and restroom facilities are to replace temporary structures to house the farm's produce sales. The applicant stated that this type of development was allowed in the standards for rehabilitation in pursuit of the act or process of making possible a compatible use for a property through repair, alterations, and additions while preserving those portions or features which convey its historical, cultural, or architectural values. Criteria D requires demonstration of consistency with the prevailing patterns and characteristics of the historic property by describing the location of the site being several acres of adjacent farmland with the intent of reinforcing the agrarian experience and appearance of the site. And for criteria E, This requires that potential negative impacts to historic sites be minimized through site design techniques, to which the applicant responded, noting the new structure's intent to replace temporary tents currently used to cover the outdoor produce market, which is consistent with the existing and historic uses of the site. All applicable approval criteria have been met, so staff recommends approval. And we sent out 549 letters for this case. I received 2 email letters in support, and those were both from Brickyard Plantation residents, which is an adjacent subdivision. One of the letters specifically requested that the approval be contingent on requiring Boone Hall to develop infrastructure to support the new buildings, but was otherwise in support. And that's all I have.
Very much. Are there any questions for staff from commissioner members before we open it to the public?
Yeah, I read one of the letters that came from somebody, Brickyard, right? And he is very concerned about traffic potential. And this has been an important issue for people in Mount Pleasant whenever Boone Hall has a big event. And Mount Pleasant Transportation even got involved with Boone Hall, and they worked it out, as far as I know. So I don't know that there are any more complaints. I understand where this person's coming from, but this is not an event hall, it's a market. So I would put aside this concern about special occasions and bad traffic.
Correct. Those are actually permitted separately. So in order to have a special event, you have to pull a special event permit where you're supposed to demonstrate your ability to meet all of those different standards that would be separate from a site plan review approval. This is not intended to be used as a special event use. It would be for daily market farming sales.
Yeah. I also have a comment on the building materials and the design.
Is it a comment or a question? Because I might, if it's a comment,
Okay,
I'll
I'll
hit
save
pause
it.
until discussion.
I will save it.
And just a question, in addition to what Ms. Sullivan is mentioning just a second ago about the traffic and things, this is an existing use, and our purview is to look at the replacement of a temporary structure with a permanent structure, right? So the actual use and access egress, that's not in our purview for this application, correct?
Right. It is reviewed in the site plan review process, just to make sure if there have been any changes in the ordinance since the previous approval. But like I mentioned, they did not complete that process. So it's looked at basically with new eyes with each time that it's seen. And yes, it is to replace temporary structures.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions, Ms. Longshore?
Just one question. Can staff confirm that the new buildings that are proposed will provide adequate parking to meet their requirements under the zoning code?
Yes, that is panned out during that site plan review process where they have to meet certain criteria, and depending on what the uses are and the hours of operation and that sort of thing, all of those parking requirements have to be met and that are prescribed in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, name and address.
Hi, I'm Will Wingfield, an architect with Reggie Gibson Architects. Address is 12 Vanderhorst Street, Charleston.
Great, thank you, sir. Is there anything in addition to what Ms. Grimble presented that you'd like to share with us about this application?
I don't think so. I think she summed it up summed it up well. Happy to answer any architectural questions y'all have, and also have the owners here with us as well, so.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Just one question that I had was, for the parking area and paths, is that permeable paving? Is that intended to be permeable paving or?
It is, yes,
hard?
with the exception of the ADA parking spot, it would be, yes.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Ms. Sullivan?
The old plan versus the new, what's the reasoning behind changing it from looking more horizontal to vertical?
It has to do with, I think, the site circulation and the parking difference. The offset nature of the driveway entrance, which off of Highway 17 is to the northeast there. So that's more the vehicular approach, and then the parking is to the rear, and kind of to get things situated within some of the site parameters. It was worked better to rotate that building rather than having that parking there in the front, which I think is much preferred.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
parking in the back is great, having the
Yeah.
restrooms in the back, and
So
having this front and center. But it's the width when you're looking at it face on. That's my question.
So why it was rotated is your question?
No, it doesn't look, I'm not asking about rotating. I'm asking about,
From the street?
this plan versus this one. This one looks more lateral, expansive,
Yeah.
and lower. It has a lower feel to it. But y'all took it to more of a vertical, and it looks a little more squished in. It's a curious question. I was very surprised to see it, but I'm interested in the rationale for it.
A big part of that reason really is the design of this timber frame that we have that is reclaimed, basically, a reclaimed timber frame that's already been built and erected and disassembled and is going to be re-erected here, I guess, is the main driver. So
Coming from where?
it was formerly at Seaside Farms, and built and designed by a local timber framer named Moyer Fountain. So
Historic.
it's not historic, but it was erected before and disassembled and will be rebuilt here. Yeah.
Okay.
But really, it's not that I decided what the height and everything would be. It was that we found this beautiful barn that had already been built that really fit their needs, I think.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Any
you.
other questions for the applicant?
In terms of the parking, I'm just looking at it. So the gravel area, that's additional parking, and then the 8 spaces, so that's the only area for parking? There's not going to be parking around?
There's
The
other
space?
parking in the surroundings for some of their special events, yes. But that parking meets the needs of the market function by itself.
I think that's gonna be. Yeah, we need more than 8 parking spots. That's gonna be a popular spot.
But did you say there is an addition, there is an existing parking area
Already there.
that's already there?
Right there.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this application?
Good evening. George Freeman, 1450 Bowman Road, Mount Pleasant. I'm not here in favor or against. I'm here to speak more in reference to the letters that you received. I agree more with the residents about the infrastructure that's going in there. Boone Hall Plantation has been a thorn in our back for quite some time over the years. There's been accidents because of people going in and out of this project for, I guess you'd say, for the main events, but there's yearly traffic there all the way around. And to have only one access to this property has always been a problem. It causes problem on Highway 17. It causes problem in the 7 Mile community. All traffic coming to and from this adds to the traffic in the 7 Mile community, which has led to what the county and the town wants to make improvements to Highway 17 and the 7 Mile community. So I disagree when you say that this project does not have any effect on traffic. Once you go to a permanent structure, it invites more people because they feel more comfortable in a solid structure as into a tenant structure. So I can see there will be added in traffic to this location with this permanent structure. I heard you say something, but this is not your purview here, but in one of the criteria, I saw that they did mention vehicular traffic in there. So if that's one of the criteria, then this does come as part of your purview. And I know you cannot tell them what to do as far as their structure, but there should be something in here to let them know that they do have a responsibility to the community to help with traffic in the area. And currently, they are not helping with traffic in the area. And that's basically what I'm here to talk about, is the fact that we're looking for Boone Hall to be more of a neighbor and allow other access to this property other than just from Highway 17, because it's going to be a continuous problem from here on and maybe after we're long gone, unless something is done with another access. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against this application? All right, we'll close out the public comment portion of this application. Do I have a motion and a second to open up discussion?
I'll make a motion to open discussion.
A motion.
A motion to approve.
Motion to approve. A motion to approve for Mr. Wright. A motion, second by Ms. Miller. Any discussion? Ms. Sullivan, I had asked you to pause. Do you want to continue back with your thought from earlier?
What thought? No, but I have a comment on the design that y'all mentioned a lot of detail in here, and commend you on using traditional materials, traditional, design reinforcements. The barn is, well, no. Yeah, I like the way you put the parking in the back, and the new barn will be front and center, because there's people don't like to drive by and look at parking. They want to look at something that's interesting. And this is the interesting thing about this property, because it was originally a farm back in the 1700s. So I'm hoping that part of this, you all are including ways to explain to the public what you've done to reflect the history of this area.
Ms. Miller?
I apologize, I've got laryngitis. Is there anything we can do for this gentleman here talking about access? Is that Boone Hall? Is that DOT? Is that responsibility there?
Joel, do you have an answer to that?
There are certain things in our ordinance through the site plan review process that triggers traffic studies. The square footage of this and its use is not enough to trigger, us to request a traffic study from the applicant. But we can certainly relay, and I think the applicant's here, let them know. From my understanding, it's the special events that are occurring out there are where they have to have traffic control from the sheriff's department in Mount Pleasant. Has been an issue there. That was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals years ago. And we can relay that to the sheriff's department as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll just add it on top of that as well, that, hopefully as this property continues its evolution and transition, and into the, long-term future, that looking at circulation patterns and points of access can continue to be explored. I don't think that there's a purview for that today with this specific application, but, in the long-term future of this property, how people move around and interact, hopefully that will continue to be up for discussion and interpretation in there. And I also find the reuse of an old other barn on this property is interesting and appealing. I didn't realize that in reading through the materials, so that was interesting thing to learn. But it looks like an attractive structure and will be a good addition to the landscape. Okay, time for the vote. So we have a motion and a second to approve the certificate of historic appropriateness. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and this is the final decision of the Historic Preservation Commission. If any person with a substantial interest in a decision of the Historic Preservation Commission chooses to appeal this decision, they may do so to the Circuit Court of Charleston County. Such appeal shall be filed within 30 calendar days after today's date. Thank you all very much. Moving on to our next part of the agenda. As directed by the Historic Preservation Commission rules and procedures, before the close of the first meeting of the calendar year, the current chair or vice chair shall call for nominations, and members will select by a majority of vote of the membership one of its members as chair and then one of its members as vice chair for the new year. And the newly elected chair and vice chair shall begin their terms upon completion for the meeting in which they are elected. I have been chair since we started this commission in 2018, and I would like to turn over the gavel to someone else. I appreciate
You're so good.
the confidence that you've all had in me, but I also want to make sure that there are other opportunities. And so with that, I would like to start the nomination process by nominating Tisha Smalls-Brown to be the next chair of this commission. If anyone would support that, perhaps with a second.
Second. Does she agree? So she's giving you the evil eye over there.
I'm sorry.
I agree, I accept.
So we have a nomination for Miss Smalls-Brown. Are there any other nominations? And if so, we can do a round of votes. All right, so we do have a nomination for Miss Smalls-Brown. Can I get a vote of aye to support Miss Smalls-Brown as the next chair?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Congratulations, Miss Smalls-Brown, for being the next chair. We do have now to vote on vice chair, and I will say that, Ms. Sullivan, you are currently the vice chair. If you would like to nominate yourself or someone nominate you to be vice chair again, or we can open the floor to nominations for vice chair.
I'm not nominating myself.
I've been vice chair, so I don't need to be
I nominate
nominated.
Ms. Gardner.
We have Donna Gardner nomination. Ms. Gardner, do you want to second that nomination or accept the nomination?
I'll accept.
All right, so we have a nomination for Donna Gardner as vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Congratulations on being vice chair. So we are going to have a new chair and vice chair. I look forward to having Ms. Smalls-Brown and Ms. Gardner picking up the gavel and continuing this commission forward for another year. And if there is no further business, Joel, are there any things from you as planning director for next month that we should be looking forward to?
Nikki, you want to talk about next month's agenda?
We can't hear you.
Okay. We do have 4 cases on the docket for next month. 2 are located within the Phillips Community Historic District. One is partially located in the Ashley River Road Historic Site, so the actual road. And then also Beefield Historic District request will be coming back.
Great.
I'm sorry, what was the last one you said?
Beefield, they came and were heard at the December meeting, I believe, and they've done some revisions and would like to come back and present those to the commission.
Great, thank you very much.
So now they're gonna, were they scheduled to come back in March? Well, it is March.
Yeah.
They did have the deferral until the March meeting, so looking forward to having that back. All right. Well, if there is no further business, this meeting of the Charleston County Historic Preservation Commission stands adjourned, and the commission will hold its next regularly scheduled meeting on March 15th, 2022, here in the council chambers. Thank you all.